everybody, it's Tracy Chen and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about the Skills Assessment Australian Computer Society, and we're going to do a very broad overview of the requirements. I'm the principal lawyer at Mason Chen Law Group. I've dropped our contact details below, so feel free to reach out to myself or one of our fantastic lawyers or agents. Now, this is going to be a very broad overview of the requirements, so you can kind of see whether you're eligible or not, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I kind of meet those requirements. Then if you are interested, you can book a consultation with us, or you could visit courses.tracymigration.com.au, where I do a much deeper dive into the requirements and for you to understand them. So, Australian Computer Society, ACS. We call it ACS. So if you hear anybody saying ACS, it's ACS. Now, this is for people who have studied a degree with an ICT major. Well, you can do ICT minor as well. We'll go through the requirements afterwards. But if you are someone who studied ICT or you're working in ICT and you want to migrate to Australia through these ICT occupations, then this is the skills assessing body that you will be looking at. So the ACS assesses occupations such as software engineer, ICT business analyst, analyst programmer, and ICT security specialist. That's just some examples. There's heaps of occupations that they actually assess. So let's talk about the different streams and the different requirements. So first of all, let's have a look at what the requirements would be if you studied in Australia. So if you studied in Australia and you completed a bachelor degree with an ICT major, that means you must have at least 33% of your units must be ICT. There's two ways you can get a skills assessment. You can get a skills assessment through completing 1 year of post-qualification work experience that's relevant to your degree. So for example, if you did a Bachelor of Information Technology, usually you could get 1 year work experience as a software engineer. If you did a Bachelor in ICT Business Analytics, then you could work 1 year as an ICT business analyst and then get a skills assessment that way. Now, the second option is through professional year. So it's kind of like studying for another year. The study part is quite easy and simple, but it gives you a skills assessment. So that's what's really important. And sometimes it's not that easy to just, come out of uni and get a job straight away in any of the professional occupations I just mentioned. It's probably a lot easier to do professional year. And I always recommend to do it because it also gives you the opportunity to potentially apply for a skills assessment in other occupations. Because the first option I said, if you did Bachelor of Information Technology and you did 1 year of work experience as a software engineer, ACS are only going to give you a skills assessment as a software engineer. They're not going to give you a skills assessment as something else, like a developer programmer, because you didn't work as a developer programmer. Although the occupations are very similar, they're not going to give that to you. Whereas if you did PY, they're likely to give it to you, because PY covers a broad range of subjects and things to do. So PY gives you that opportunity. So I always recommend to do it. And I know it costs a bit of money, but that is also something you need to consider if you're going to study an IT degree. That's something I always mention. I say, I know that IT is great. There's a lot of potential in it. I'm totally for it. It's great for migration as well. But you need to remember that the skills assessing is not simple. You need to have the work experience or PY. So you've got to be prepared to fork out the price for PY as well, which I don't know how much it is, but I know it's over $10,000 for that 12 months of study. So that's the first step and one of the first pathways to a skills assessment. Then there's a bunch of other ones. So let's just go through them, but they get very complicated and there's lots to do. So let's just do a broad overview of that. So if you have an overseas degree, that's a bachelor degree, and at the required level, so it has to be equivalent to an Australian bachelor's degree. An Australian bachelor's degree is taught at a certain level, and it's definitely over a course of 3 years. If you did an overseas degree and they call it bachelor, but you only studied it for 2 years, I would say that's a red flag and it may not be equivalent to an Australian degree. Anyways, if that's you, then you must have 2 years of work experience in a highly relevant field to what you study. So same thing. So Bachelor of Information Technology, highly relevant to software engineering. You need to have 2 years work experience as a software engineer. Then if you had a bachelor degree, which is still ICT major, but you did a different type of job. So for example, let's say it's Bachelor of Business Analytics. That degree is clearly a business analytics degree. There's probably not much coding and software developing in that degree. So if you were to get 2 years of work experience as a software engineer, you probably wouldn't get a positive skills assessment. You actually need 4 years. and that's noted in the summary of criteria by ACS. So that's what I mean, it's really tricky. This video hopefully gives you a broad overview so you know which direction you're heading, but I would say definitely get the right advice or get some more information in regards to it before you lodge a skills assessment for it, because it gets quite complicated. If you completed a bachelor degree, which is at the required level, but it's ICT minor, so it's less than 33%, then you need to have 5 years of relevant ICT work experience in that occupation. That 5 years work experience must also be in the last 10 years. If it's not in the last 10 years, then you need to have 6 years in total. Super confusing. But yeah, that's for people who have an ICT minor degree. So there's some like degrees that are like Bachelor of Business, and then there's ICT minor subjects in there. So that's where you could see you potentially could be eligible that way for it. Then there's if you have a bachelor degree, which is an ICT minor, that's not closely related to the work experience that you had. So again, like one of those Bachelor of Business degrees, which has a minor in information systems and business analytics, whereas you worked as a software engineer. If you need to get work experience as a software engineer, then you'll probably need 6 years of work experience. So that's kind of like the overview. There's also some other ways you can do it if you had a diploma, but we won't go through them today. I'll save that for a separate video because they're super complicated in the way that you assess them. Now, if any of them were you, then you need to be able to provide the evidence to back it up, because as you can see, a lot of it requires a qualification. So you need to have the certificate plus the transcript, because they're looking closely at that transcript to see if you have the right qualification and subjects for it. But you also need to have the work experience to back it up. And ACS are pretty difficult when it comes to work experience and how they assess it. You must have the relevant work experience. You must have the work reference that lists all the required work duties required for that occupation. So important for that one. You need to have pay slips, and they usually ask for all pay slips. And I know that's so difficult when you have like years and years of experience. It's alright if you just have 1 year work experience, that's nice and neat. If you have like 10 years, it gets a bit tricky there. You need to have proof of the pay slips, like how they were paid. So you must have bank statements, superannuation, and tax documents. Complicated. So there's a lot to provide there. So with the work experience, it does not need to be full-time. 20 hours per week will be fine. Then you'll go to the ACS portal and you prepare your application. For ACS, I do highly recommend getting someone to help you with this one, because it's quite complicated and it's quite a process within itself. And they don't really give you an opportunity to provide more documents if you forget it. They can just refuse it on that basis. And the review process is pretty tough as well. So I would say definitely get the right advice before you plunge into this skills assessing body. It's probably one of the more difficult ones from an administrative perspective. I wouldn't say it's difficult in terms of, what you need and stuff, but admin wise, it's quite heavy. And these are taking quite long to process. So they're taking 3 or 4 months to get a result for your ACS. So you want to get it right because you're waiting a while for it. So I've got courses.tracymigration.com.au. There will be mini courses there which go through the requirements for each different section. So I hope that was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video with people who need it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.